My sister told my children I'd chosen to abandon them while I worked overseas. She filed for guardianship and blocked every call. When I returned, my son didn't recognize me. She said, "You were gone. We moved on." I stayed silent until I presented the judge with my travel logs, voice messages, and the flight she'd secretly paid to delay my return. 5 years ago, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left the country for work and left my 2 kids with my sister. I live in Overland Park, Kansas. I'm a mechanical engineer. After my divorce, things were rough. My ex took off. Last I heard, he was somewhere in Arizona with a woman half his age. He didn't pay child support, didn't call the kids. He just vanished. That left me holding everything: the house, the bills, and 2 little kids who needed everything from me. When I got the offer to work overseas in Singapore, it felt like a lifeline. The salary was 3 times what I was making here. Free housing, paid travel bonuses.
It wasn't just about me.
It meant I could get us out of debt, save for the kids' futures, maybe buy a better place when I came back. The contract was 2 years. I planned every detail: flights home every 6 months, regular video calls, gifts sent on birthdays. I made it as smooth as I could. Andrea, my older sister, had always been close. She was a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids around the same age. Her husband made good money. They had the space. She said yes, right away. "Of course we'll help. We're family." She offered to keep them in her home while I worked overseas. I gave her legal guardianship, temporary, signed and notarized, so she could enroll them in school, take them to the doctor, handle emergencies. That first year went okay. I missed them like hell. I flew home for Christmas, then again in June. We did calls every Sunday. Andrea would put them on Zoom or WhatsApp. Sometimes they were tired, sometimes distracted, but I could hear their voices. I thought I was holding things together. But by the end of that first year, things started to slip. At first, Andrea would miss a call and say, "Oh, sorry, we were at the lake," or "They fell asleep early." Then it started happening more often. Texts would go unanswered. The calls we did have felt rushed, like someone was always watching. My daughter started saying things that didn't sound like her. "You're always gone. Andrea says it's better here." My son wouldn't talk much at all. The second year got worse. I didn't see it clearly at the time. I told myself she was just overwhelmed.
For kids is a lot.
I should have known better. By then, Andrea stopped picking up entirely. I'd call and leave voice messages. No reply. I'd text asking for pictures, updates, nothing. I'd get random short messages like busy or all good, and that was it. I started to panic. I asked for a video call. She ghosted me. I tried reaching out to her husband. He didn't respond either. I tried calling the school, and they said they couldn't share information with me anymore because Andrea had submitted a new custody order. I had no idea what was going on. When my contract ended and I told Andrea I was flying home, she acted strange. She said the kids were in a routine and asked if I could give it another few weeks. Then she said there was drama with their school and issues with my house being unsafe due to water damage. She offered to keep them, just until you're fully settled. Then I found out she had logged into my frequent flyer account and used points to push my flight back. She had all my info from when I first asked her to help. She knew my passwords. She'd booked me on a later flight without telling me, then made up an excuse about cancellations. When I finally made it back to Overland Park, I didn't even go home first. I went straight to her house. I pulled up in a rental car and saw my kids in the driveway playing. My daughter looked taller. My son, who was only 7 when I left, didn't even look up. When I got out and walked toward them, they froze. My daughter stepped back. My son clung to Andrea's leg like I was a stranger. I'll never forget what she said. She walked up, crossed her arms, and said, "You were gone.
We moved on."
I tried to speak, tried to say something to the kids, but they didn't come to me. They looked confused, scared even. Andrea blocked my path and said, "You gave them up when you left.
They're settled now.
You need to let them be." That night I cried in my car until I couldn't breathe. The next day I found a lawyer. I had kept everything. Every call. Every message. I had logs of voicemails from her, months apart, where she promised to set up a call and never did. Screenshots of dozens of unanswered messages. A copy of the temporary guardianship agreement, clearly stating it expired the moment I returned. And the email from the airline showing that the flight change came from her device. I stayed quiet in front of her, but I was documenting everything. I filed my response to the guardianship petition she'd submitted without my knowledge. She claimed I had abandoned the kids, that I didn't call, didn't write, that I'd left them emotionally for dead. She had pictures of the kids at school events, smiling next to her and her husband, like she was the only parent they ever had. What she didn't count on was that I kept the receipts. Every digital breadcrumb. Every lie. That first court hearing was just the beginning. The first court hearing was tense, but it didn't go how Andrea thought it would. I sat there across from her in that cold courtroom in Johnson County, and she wouldn't even look at me. She sat next to her husband, holding a manila folder like it had her whole case inside. She had a smile on her face like she'd already won. Then my lawyer stood up and handed the judge a stack of documents, printouts of texts I'd sent her that she never responded to, call logs from WhatsApp, voice messages she left me begging for just a little more time, and the airline confirmation email that showed someone from her IP address had logged into my account to delay my flight. Her face changed. Fast. The judge didn't make a final ruling that day. He said he needed time to review the evidence, but he reinstated my parental rights on the spot. He ordered shared custody pending full investigation and demanded the kids be allowed to spend weekends with me, effective immediately. That night, I picked them up. My son sat in the back seat, arms crossed, looking out the window. My daughter was quiet the whole ride. They didn't ask about Singapore. They didn't ask where I'd been. They didn't ask anything. When we got home, my son walked through the house like it was a stranger's place. He looked at old photos on the wall like he'd never seen them before. "Why did you leave us?" he asked.
I didn't know what to say.
I tried to explain simply that I'd gone to work, that it was for them, that I called, that I never stopped loving them. He shook his head and said, "Aunt Andrea said you didn't want us anymore." My heart cracked. I stood there trying to swallow the rage rising in my throat. That weekend was hard. The kids were distant.
They didn't trust me.
They asked to call Andrea every night before bed. She'd whisper things to them I couldn't hear. After each call, they pulled further away from me. The next weekend, she refused to send them. Said my house wasn't safe. That I was too emotional. My lawyer filed for contempt. Then she filed a motion to have me evaluated for mental instability, based on nothing but an email I sent in a panic when she ghosted me for weeks. She knew exactly how to play the game. Then things got uglier. I lost my job offer back in the States. Word had gotten out I was tied up in a custody battle. Andrea started posting online about how she was fighting to protect 2 innocent children from being dragged across the world. She posted pictures of my kids, tagged family members, called me neglectful, reckless, even dangerous. My own cousin reached out and said, "Maybe they're better off with her. You were gone too long." That's when I knew. Andrea had been building this story for over a year, slowly poisoning the well. She knew exactly what she was doing. But I knew something else, too. She hadn't done this out of love for my kids. She did it for control. She liked the praise, the attention, playing the hero. And she was sloppy. I started digging. I got a tech expert to go through the metadata of the photos she used in court. Some were edited, faces blurred, timestamps cropped. I traced Facebook messages she sent to my ex, begging him to sign away his rights so she could make things permanent. She never told me about those messages. I found them when his sister forwarded me screenshots. Turns out he had some regret. She'd pushed him hard, too. There was more. So much more. The lies hadn't stopped. And if she wanted a war, I was ready. Just when I thought I had Andrea cornered, she played a card I didn't see coming. One afternoon, I was at the courthouse with my lawyer reviewing our next motion when he slid a new document across the table. "You need to see this," he said. Andrea had filed a counterclaim. She was accusing me of emotional abuse. Claimed I had abandoned the kids not for work, but to escape parental duties. She submitted a written statement from her neighbor, someone I'd never even met, saying she heard the kids cry every night when they came back from weekends with me. The neighbor's name? Mallory, Andrea's best friend from her book club. That was just the beginning. Andrea had also compiled a notebook full of handwritten journal entries. Dated. Emotional. All about the kids' trauma from being left behind. She described in detail how my son would shake at night, how my daughter cried herself to sleep asking why her mom didn't want her. She even taped in a picture my daughter had drawn 2 houses, one with bright colors labeled home, the other small and gray, labeled mom. I knew it wasn't real. I knew Andrea had been feeding those thoughts into their heads for over a year. But how do you prove manipulation that subtle? My lawyer said, this is going to come down to expert testimony. We brought in a child psychologist. Court-appointed. Neutral. She met with the kids, with me, with Andrea. A few weeks later, the psychologist's report came in. It was 18 pages long. And it had one key sentence that changed everything. There is evidence of consistent emotional influence by the guardian against the biological parent. The psychologist didn't call it brainwashing, but she might as well have. She described patterns of loyalty shifting, coached responses, and blocked communication channels intentionally maintained by the guardian. It was a slow, steady form of alienation. And it had worked. But there was something else in that report. The psychologist had spoken with my daughter alone. My daughter said she didn't want to talk to me because she thought I left because she wasn't good enough. Not because I had a job overseas, but because she wasn't worth staying for. I broke down when I read that. That's when the final twist hit me like a brick. One of the messages Andrea used in court, a WhatsApp screenshot she claimed proved I stopped reaching out, was fake. It wasn't just out of context. It was doctored. The tech expert I'd hired to comb through metadata flagged it. The timestamp didn't match the phone's actual message log. The font spacing was off by pixels. It had been edited. My lawyer brought it to a forensic analyst. They confirmed it. She had faked a message to make it look like I'd ghosted my own kids. We filed a motion to present this new evidence. Andrea had lied.
Not just to me.
Not just to the kids, but to the court. Under oath. The judge scheduled a new hearing. And for the first time, I saw something in Andrea's face I hadn't seen before.
Fear.
The final hearing started on a rainy Tuesday morning. I remember the sky being gray and heavy, like it knew what was about to happen. Andrea walked in wearing a navy blue dress like she was still trying to look like some kind of savior. Her husband wasn't with her this time. I learned later he had pulled away quietly over the last few weeks. Once he saw the full psychologist report and the forensic breakdown of that fake message, he stopped showing up to court, stopped backing her online, even sent an affidavit to the court saying he was not aware of any message tampering and never personally witnessed abandonment. That morning, the judge didn't waste time. He laid everything out in calm, clear language. First, he acknowledged that I had provided overwhelming proof that I never abandoned my children. He mentioned the travel logs, the airline records, and the messages Andrea intercepted or deleted. Then, he brought up the psychologist's report. He read key lines out loud in court. The one about emotional influence. The one about Andrea undermining my role as a parent. But it was the forensic proof that sealed it. The analyst walked the court through the fake screenshot. How it had been doctored. How the message had been spliced together using old words I'd actually written in different conversations. He even showed the exact parts of the image file that proved it had been edited using a third-party app. When the judge asked Andrea to respond, she didn't. She just stared at the table. Then he turned to her and said something I'll never forget. You didn't just lie to this court. You weaponized trust. You took in 2 children under the promise of care and used that promise to wage a private war against their mother. That is not guardianship. That is theft. He stripped her of all guardianship rights that day. Ordered the kids returned to me full-time, effective immediately. He also referred her case to the district attorney for criminal investigation, possible perjury, and fraud. She would later be charged with filing false evidence and interference with custody. But that wasn't the end of it. I didn't want revenge that was just legal. I wanted people to know what she did. She'd try to paint me as a monster in the court of public opinion. So I took every screenshot, every voicemail, every airline record, and I gave them to a family law blog run by a local reporter. The story went viral in our town. Mother falsely accused of abandonment reclaims children after sister's scheme unravels. People saw through her. Neighbors stopped waving. The PDA quietly pushed her out. Even her book club stopped meeting at her house. The final blow came from her own daughter, my niece. She called me weeks later in tears. She said, "I don't know who my mom is anymore." She started therapy soon after. As for my kids, it's been a long road. They didn't suddenly come back to me like flipping a switch. It took time, counseling, patience. At first, they still asked to call her. I didn't stop them. But over time, they stopped on their own. They started seeing how different things were when no one was whispering poison in their ears. One night, my son, barely holding it together, asked me, "You didn't leave us, right?" I pulled him close and said, "Never. I never stopped fighting to come home." And that's what this whole story is. Not just about betrayal or lies or legal wins. It's about coming home. About making sure truth cuts through noise. About never letting someone rewrite your story while you're still alive to tell it. Andrea thought she'd taken everything from me. What she really did was show everyone exactly who she was. And once people saw her for real, she lost everything she tried to steal. That was her punishment. My revenge? I got my kids back. And I made damn sure she'll never get near them again.